Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, we're going to now switch gears a little bit and introduce our next presenter. Tanya Freirich is here. She is a registered dietitian and also a lupus warrior. And so we're glad that she's here tonight to share a little bit about healthy eating and things to avoid. And so Tanya, do you want to try to pull up your slides?
Yes, so I will try to share the screen and
Because
we will see, and then let me know, of course, if
so I can see that. Can everybody, can somebody just let us know in the Q&A or if you can see that? Yes.
okay, so we got some yeses.
We're getting some yeses.
Yay. Okay, great. We'll get started. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'll try to aim to be done on time and then leave a little bit of wiggle room for Q&A. So thank you all so much for coming. This is me. Hello. We are going to talk about lupus and nutrition. This is always the disclaimer. So the information in the webinar is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose or treat medical conditions or replace your usual medical care. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner for the most appropriate individualized medical care for you before making any lifestyle or nutritional changes. So we're going to fly through the introduction, Lupus 101, and really get to the nutrition as soon as possible. So who am I? Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. But I am a registered dietitian. I have been for more than a decade. I absolutely love helping people figure out how they should be eating to feel their best. I also am a lupus warrior. I've had lupus for about 8 years now. And I really, really am so passionate about empowering others to make changes, because so much of living with a chronic illness like lupus is you feel like it's not really within your control, but diet and lifestyle is 100% in your control. So we have types of lupus. SLE is systemic, cutaneous, drug-induced, and neonatal. We're going to focus on systemic, and also a lot of these sorts of recommendations can help reduce the inflammation and help your cutaneous lupus as well. So the causes of lupus, again, we'll be quick about this, but I do want people to note that it's an interplay of all three. So genetics certainly play a component. Unfortunately, lupus sometimes runs in families, and there's a lot of people with lupus in the family, but environment like infections, injuries, traumas, stress can be not only a cause for lupus, but a cause for a lupus flare. And then hormones. Now, this is the area where we can make a big difference with our diet and lifestyle. So unfortunately, there is an increased risk of flare or disease activity during menstruation, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, puberty. Any of these big hormonal shifts are sometimes acting as a trigger for lupus or increased disease activity. And we know that it affects men much more often than women, much more often than men. So hormonal does have an influence. So some of these symptoms of lupus, the main reason I bring this up is that there's some of these symptoms that are very, very well treated with medications. However, there are some of these symptoms, for example, some of the joint pain, definitely the fatigue, brain fog, that are not so amenable to being completely resolved with medications, but this is where diet and lifestyle can make a really big difference. So I bring this up only to say that there are some real life repercussions of lupus. I'm sure we're all aware, but there's an increased risk of death from cardiovascular disease, and a heart healthy diet is something the entire family can follow and benefit from. So baseline, if everyone starts implementing a heart healthy diet, it's great for the person living with lupus and anyone else eating at that table. There are an increased risk for fatal infections and kidney failure. Just as Dr. Geraldino was saying at the beginning, of course, we want to be very mindful of those warning signs of kidney involvement, of lupus nephritis, because those are very important to catch early. How can we live longer and healthier? So obviously see your doctors, focus on the diet, incorporate more movement, reduce stress, get adequate sleep, and modify your environment to be a healthier environment. So where do we start with nutrition? Definitely balance meals and plates, just as it was mentioned before. We can pay attention to a little bit of what are those macronutrients. Of course, the heart healthy nutrition is kind of baseline step one of what we can do. Read nutrition labels, reduce inflammation, and increasing the nutritional content of our food. So here are some examples of healthy plates. So we've got examples of lean proteins. This is fish, chicken again, and most importantly, and usually where most people are not getting enough of, 50% being vegetables. And you see here, there's plenty of cuisines represented. And I want everyone to be mindful that whatever cuisine that you enjoy or grew up with is okay. Oh, excuse me, that there is not one right way. There is not one correct lupus diet. These are very flexible categories for a reason, because there's a million ways that you can actually have a very healthy diet. But these proportions are a really great way to start. So I did want to ask a polling question, but we are tight on time. So if anyone wants to throw into the Q&A or the chat an example of a carbohydrate or a protein or a fat, we can do that, but I will only wait a couple seconds before continuing so that we have more time for the other things. Okay, I'm not seeing any chats come in, but the next slide is examples, so we'll go through it. Carbohydrates are grains, fruits, starchy vegetables, dairy, and legumes. But, look in the protein category, also dairy and legumes, poultry, fish, and meat, nuts and seeds. And then we go over to fats, oils, dairy, again, avocado and fatty fish. So there's overlap between these. Sometimes, especially kind of like trendy diet nutrition will say in terms of on social media, oh, well, you have to do this, eliminate that. Our food is much more complex than that. It's not so easy, just eliminating one whole category. And I really wouldn't recommend it. These three are very important. Now, heart healthy nutrition, where do we get started? If you just want to dip your toe in the water of eating healthier, first and foremost, reduce your salt intake. This is beneficial for your heart. It's beneficial for your kidneys, and also lowering that blood pressure is just a really great place to start. Also, sodium is really easy to avoid. So if you're choosing things like fresh fruits, vegetables, less processed food, you're going to cut down the amount of sodium immeasurably. Huge portion of and the majority, I think it's 70% of our sodium intake is from processed food. So if we can cut that down, you're going to see a big change very easily. So the next thing for heart is reducing saturated fat intake. So especially red meats, processed meats, deep fried foods. These sorts of things are not great for our cholesterol numbers, and honestly not great for inflammation. So let's try to avoid those if possible. And you see at the bottom of the slide, we want to increase our healthy fat intake, particularly omega-3s and omega-9s. We're not usually getting enough of. We get a lot of omega-6s, and it's easy to get a lot of saturated fat as well. Additionally, we really want to avoid those trans fats. So they are terrible for us. If we can avoid them, please do. And trans fats are usually in processed bakery goods, margarine, those examples down there, like the pretzels, the chips, the crackers may have trans fat added to them. And in the ingredient, it would be hydrogenated vegetable oil. And of course, fruits and vegetables, we all need it. So if you're looking at the label, what do we want to increase? We want to increase our fiber, our potassium, unsaturated fats, protein, vitamins, minerals. We want to decrease salt or sodium, saturated fats, and trans fats, just as I mentioned. And then the added sugars, those are also not so great for us. They're not really providing much nutritional benefit, really. So I will give you all, again, just a couple of seconds for this polling question. If you can put it in the Q&A or in the chat, which of these are a source of sugar, molasses, maltose, fruit juice concentrate, high fructose corn syrup, or all of the above? I know I'm demanding that we go quickly, but I want to get to the meat of the slides. Oh, someone commented, yay. All, yes, Linda, good job. So all of the above, that is correct. These are all sources of sugar. So how do we maintain a stable blood sugar? And you may be wondering, why are we talking about blood sugar? We were just talking about all of these other things. So if we continue to have stable blood sugar, then we have something called insulin in our body that's also stable. Insulin is a hormone, and all of the, let's say, blood sugar highs and lows can put us up for a pretty low energy day, to be honest, and not help with keeping those hormones nice and stable throughout the day. So names for sugar, plenty. These can all be on the ingredient list: brown sugar, corn syrup, fruit juice concentrate, honey, invert sugar, malt sugar, anything ending in ose, like that maltose, syrup. They're all sugar. Once it gets in our body breaks it down into the pieces and you get glucose from it. So we want to reduce the intake of foods that are very high in sugar: sodas, juices, sweetened coffees or teas. That would be like anything from a coffee shop where they're putting the pumps of syrup in there, or the drizzles on top, anything like that. A lot of those flavorings as well. Desserts, obviously, sweet snacks, candy. We just had Halloween. Hidden forms of sugar. Sometimes they'll put it in condiments or nut butters. And we want to increase the intake of water. There's so many people that are just walking around slightly dehydrated, and it also kind of drains your energy. So being hydrated. Fruit-based desserts, if you can, lower sugar alternatives. Oftentimes people find that as they reduce the sugar, your taste buds change. You actually are more sensitive to less amounts of sugar. So for example, I had a client a long time ago. She was a wonderful person, but she put like, I think 9 pumps into her, whatever the large size coffee is, when we first met. And then the whipped cream on top and the drizzle, it was probably 50, 60 grams of sugar. It was a lot. And so we worked on it. No drastic changes, just reduce it slowly over time. By the time we finished working together, she was down to having the coffee, I think, with just 2 packets of sugar instead of all those pumps and the syrups and the drizzles and the fancy whipped cream. And she was like, this tastes really sweet to me now. So it can be gradual. It doesn't have to be restrictive or feel dramatic or that you're deprived. Other things that we should increase our intake of include vegetables. And if you can find the no sugar added ones, you do not need to use the diet ones. Diet sugars, those artificial sweeteners, also really aren't that great for us. Every once in a while, no problem. But don't think, okay, I'm going to switch from, let's say, having 5 sodas. Now I'm going to have 8 diet sodas. That's a better choice. Both options, if we can just get to water or herbal teas or lightly sweetened coffee or tea, would be a better direction. We don't want too many of those artificial sweeteners either. So what are inflammatory foods, particularly for lupus? First and foremost, this one is really easy to avoid because it's in almost all, like only processed foods. It's a food coloring. It's called tartrazine, but what you can find it in the ingredient label is yellow number 5, F and D and C, yellow number 5, basically yellow and the number 5 in some sort of combination. It is a food coloring that has been linked with an increase in lupus symptoms. Now, granted, most of us are not consuming tons of this, but if you look through your pantry and you're finding 5, 6, 7 products that have yellow number 5 in it, it may be worthwhile next time you go to the grocery store, try to find ones that don't have the yellow number 5. Obviously, the less processed things like fresh fruits and vegetables will never have food coloring because it came from a plant. This food coloring is usually in things like candies, chips, crackers, cereal. Unfortunately, sometimes they put it in our makeup and our medications, and it's to give the food coloring, usually yellow, orange, red. Sometimes it is combined with blue to make green. Now, other things that we can avoid that does increase inflammation in our body: high fat and salt. So just as we were mentioning before, those saturated fats, high sodium foods, these are some examples. Processed meats, that would be like your bologna or Spam or hot dogs, TV dinners, anything that's very prepared. So it already has the sauces added to it. The ingredient list is 75 ingredients long. Is a pretty processed food. So try to be careful with those, maybe using more sparingly. Frozen meals and canned food, that is a big place to find a lot of sodium. Ultra processed foods. So again, that list of 75 ingredients, an example would be like, instead of an apple or maybe sliced apples or applesauce, this would be minimally processed. Maybe you're getting like an apple Pop-Tart, or not to call out a brand, like any sort of like baked goods, those little apple pies that somehow the expiration date is 18 months from now. That's a good sign that it's an ultra processed food. It has a lot of ingredients and a lot of preservatives. Plenty of other examples: soft drinks, chips, chocolate, candy. Anyway, if you can go back a couple of steps and get a more minimally processed food, that's a great way to make sure that you're not getting these food colorings and preservatives and additives, extra sugar, extra sodium. That's not great for us. And also more vitamins and minerals. The more unprocessed that you go, you're getting more of those phytochemicals, which are a good thing. Alfalfa seeds and sprouts. So there was a study, and since then has been proven again and again, that unfortunately, for some reason, this L-carnitine triggers lupus-like symptoms in people that don't even have lupus. So the alfalfa seeds and sprouts are sometimes found on different sorts of meals and dishes, sometimes included in sandwiches, sometimes on pho or pad thai, stir fries, sometimes salads, like where they add the microgreens and sprouts. Unfortunately, if you do have lupus, I would just recommend avoiding these. Excessive alcohol, we all know that that's not so great for us. It's to be intoxicated. It is a toxin. So try to keep it to, let's say, 1 glass every once in a while. That's the serving for women. The serving for men is 2 glasses or servings per day. So not a wine glass filled to the brim, but let's say 3 or 4 ounces. Excessive sugar, we touched upon this as well. Just try to taper it down slowly. Again, your taste buds will get acclimated and you may not need nearly as much very quickly after trying to taper it down. So what are some trigger foods? So this is a very popular question that I get, and I want to put a disclaimer, notice all the stars, that it 100% depends on the individual. So yes, there are some trigger foods out there. Everyone, just as we said at the very beginning, actually, everyone may not have heard that. So every single person that has lupus has a different presentation. You are a different person. You have different symptoms. You have different treatment plans. And the sorts of trigger foods that may exist for you are different than, let's say, the person sitting beside you in a lupus support group. So take this with an asterisk that certainly not all of these things apply to everyone. Maybe 1 or 2 things apply to people, but these are things that if you want to pay attention to, may be something that does make your symptoms come up a little bit. So gluten, that one's really easy to find. Breads, cakes, cookies, pasta, snacks, dairy. Again, if you think that you're lactose intolerant at all, that might be a good place to start to just really reduce it down. Try to replace it with non-dairy counterparts. There's so many these days in terms of like plant-based butters, non-dairy milks made from nuts or seeds. So there's a lot of other options. Nightshade, and I put vegetables to give these examples, but technically tomato is a fruit. And there's also spices. Nightshade is a family. So it's kind of a variety of vegetables, fruits, and like herbs and spices. So anyway, tomatoes, tomatillos, eggplant, white potato, peppers, and paprika are some of the most often found in at least the US food system. In other countries, it's a different story. But some people may find this triggering. Soy, especially if it's something that perhaps genetically your ancestors weren't really eating that much of, it may not agree with you all that well. But again, it depends on the individual. Always talk to your healthcare providers about this. But soy could be edamame, soy milk, tofu, soybeans, soy sauce, legumes, eggs, and garlic. So I put immune stimulating ? Because it's a little confusing. Some people feel great when they eat garlic, and it actually helps their immune system in a really positive way. Some people eat garlic and they find it flares their symptoms. So again, depends on the individual, but these are sorts of things to just start paying attention to. Now, what do we want to include? I never, ever want to leave anyone feeling like, oh my goodness, what do I eat? Let's focus on the things that we really want to increase. So first and foremost, vegetables and fruits. I know I've said it quite a few times, but we want to eat a variety of those colors. We want fresh things in our diet, minimally processed versions. So for example, if your grocery store doesn't have the best fresh produce, go ahead, take advantage of the frozen. It can be cost effective. It can be a great way to get vegetables into your diet where you don't have to worry about, oh no, they're going bad in the crisper drawer. Healthy fats. So those omega-3s, we need a lot of them. And oftentimes people aren't getting enough. So fatty fish like salmon, sardines, tuna, herring, anchovies, nuts and seeds like chia seeds, ground flaxseed, walnuts. Gut health is super important. So our immune system is very, very interwoven or tied to our gut health. So pro and prebiotics, bone broth, collagen, fiber, these all influence our gut health. Herbs and spices. So some of my favorites to recommend, turmeric or ginger, cinnamon. Turmeric actually had a very good recent study with people consuming turmeric where it really helped their lupus nephritis. Water. So again, we all kind of hang out in a dehydrated state often, unless you're very proactive with your water and your hydration. And it is key for a healthy gut, for good digestion in terms of going to the bathroom regularly, both urinating and bowel movements, healthy kidneys. So when you're consuming enough fluids, your kidneys have to work a lot less hard. If you're not consuming enough, they have to work much, much harder to take the things that need to be excreted out of your body. Certainly it helps with energy. So when we're dehydrated, we feel a little bit lower in energy. And there's so much more that I help people with one-on-one. So I want to say a very, very big thank you and leave at least a few moments for questions, but this is how you can find me. So how do I help people? I am a dietitian. I have been for a very, very long time. I work with people one-on-one, but I also have a group coaching program called Live Better with Lupus Academy. You can email me. It is my name a little bit repetitively. You can find me literally everywhere as The Lupus Dietitian. My website is www.thelupusdietitian. Please reach out. Please introduce yourself. I love meeting new people. I love hearing how other people are doing, what's worked for you, or if you need help, please reach out. I am here to help. So I will stop sharing. I don't see any Q&A. I'm so surprised. You guys were great typing your questions before. So please take the opportunity. I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, again, I point out to everyone, you've got a registered dietitian here ready to answer some questions.
At your disposal, I'm here.
I was just going to say, make a few comments. First of all, that was a really great presentation. You're a really great presenter, very comfortable presenter. So I appreciated that. And I learned a few things. I don't have lupus, but I think a lot of the things that you presented here would be helpful for a lot of people. And I know that a lot of people with lupus ask us a lot about inflammation and about foods that cause inflammation. And so I'm just curious if there are people, people are still out there, if you want to answer, just like, what are some foods that cause you issues? Have you noticed some foods that just bother you? I'd be curious to know if anybody, has anything like that. No questions? Come on.
I think that's a great question too.
It is, because I think, okay, I drink a lot of tea. Is that okay?
Oh, great question. Teas are fantastic. So the only kind of word of caution that I would put with it is if you're consuming a lot of caffeinated tea and then having trouble sleeping. So if you enjoy maybe a caffeinated tea early in the day, if you're sleeping great, then wonderful, but caffeine can really interfere with the quality of our sleep. There's plenty of great teas. I mean, green tea, white tea, oolong, black tea, they're all actually kind of the same family of teas, and they have been shown to be helpful for inflammation. So the best way to have your tea, for example, is without sugar, if you can tolerate it. Sometimes people need like a little bit of something with it. So you could always put a little bit of lemon juice. It sounds a little strange, but like an apple slice, for example, if you're having cinnamon tea, can give it that sweetness. And cinnamon's kind of sweet feeling anyway, but then you're not adding the extra sugar to it. So teas can be fantastic, especially now that we're rolling into the colder months. If anyone has Raynaud's where your fingers feel very cold, having that warm cup of tea can be really nice to keep you warm, keep that circulation going, prevent very, very cold fingers, especially if, let's say, you're out and about, maybe have the hot tea cup to keep your hands a little bit warmer when you're wearing mittens or gloves. And it's just nice. It's so soothing to have a warm cup of tea and kind of that mental break. So that can help also with stress reduction.
She's asking about hibiscus.
Oh, sure. There's no problem with that at all. From my understanding, at least now, and please, again, check with your doctors, but from my understanding, it doesn't interact with medications. I always put a little side of caution with grapefruit. So unfortunately, grapefruit has something in it that kind of interferes with our absorption of other medications. So that we have to be careful with. But from my understanding, hibiscus does not. It's not caffeinated because it's coming from that plant that does not have caffeine. It's a beautiful taste. I mean, it's floral. It's very nice. So please enjoy.
Do you have any suggestions for occasional fast food? I know it's generally not good, but are there types or places that you would recommend or foods, I guess, at a fast food?
Yeah, great question. So again, if you can go kind of as simple as possible. Now, fast food places are offering salads. Would I say that that may be the most satisfying salad? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like there are those kind of quick casual bakery cafe chains where the salad may actually be quite delicious. If it is, let's say, a more traditional fast food, like that's attached to the gas station and they do much better with fried foods, that salad's probably not going to be so delicious. So maybe just go for like the grilled chicken sandwich, grilled chicken tenders. That's pretty basic. You're not getting all the fried breading and extra fats from it being deep fried. I'm always a big proponent of if you're going to be out and about, or maybe you have a road trip, people are traveling to visit friends and family in the coming months, to have snacks, to really pack yourself. I know it sounds a little funny, but maybe a little mini cooler, because it's hard to find healthy food when you're rushed, when you're on the go. So always having kind of your backup plan, and maybe you don't need it. Maybe you find a delicious meal. Actually, and this is like, I'm thinking proximity to highways or in any sort of strip mall. Sometimes there's places like, let's say maybe a Chinese food place or a Mexican place where you can get actually very healthy food. So for example, like steamed veggies or a stir fry and just get the sauce on the side. If it's, let's say, a Mexican place or a South American type cuisine, maybe there's, again, the protein, rice, beans, veggies, like that can be a fantastic meal too. So it's not impossible, but if you're really rushed or on a tight time frame, maybe having your own snacks is a great backup plan. So you don't feel like, oh, this is the only option. I have to do this and it's not going to make my stomach feel so good. But those are, if you are out and about and really need a meal on the go, those are some of my recommendations of meals.
This is a good question. What would be a good breakfast diet? And the second part of this, she's not asking a question, but I don't know if you talked a lot about it, but intermittent fasting, which I think a lot of is kind of popular right now. So good breakfast diet, and then maybe you could talk a little bit about intermittent fasting.
Yeah. So breakfast, honestly, it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to take up very much of your time. There's a lot of ways in the morning time to incorporate foods that are really great for us. So let's say if you don't want to cook oatmeal, you can do overnight oats where you soak them the night before with a non-dairy milk. That's a great place to put nuts and seeds and fresh fruit and cinnamon. If you like chia seed pudding, that's a little bit trendy right now. Scrambled eggs. You can also do those ahead of time. So you could do essentially like scramble the eggs, add lots of chopped up vegetables and bake them as like little mini egg muffin frittatas, and then freeze them. And you can just heat up 1 or 2 in the morning time. So I completely understand people don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen if they're rushing out the door, but having a little bit of prep time could be a great way to be able to incorporate some of those really healthy foods in the morning time. If you're not a morning person, if you're like, no, I just want to drink my coffee and get out the door, maybe having something really simple, a boiled egg, a handful of nuts, a piece of fruit like a banana, at least something to give your body a little bit more fuel in the morning is a great way to start the day. And again, kind of keep the sugar balance and your insulin steady throughout the day. Now, talking about intermittent fasting, going right into that one. So I usually find that people do the best if they follow intermittent fasting front loaded. So let's say you wake at 7, you're having a meal somewhat near afterwards. So not having your window of eating start at noon or 2 p.m. and go into the late evening. If you can have an early dinner and that's kind of the cutoff, then presumably you're having the food when you're most active, when you really need that energy, when you need that fuel. And people seem to do better when they're doing that. So that's my recommendation for intermittent fasting. My other recommendation is please don't make your window too small. It is actually it's kind of asking a lot of your body. If you're only consuming 1 meal per day, you're kind of throwing it, for anyone that has made a fire at all or a bonfire, you don't throw all the wood in there and just walk away. You're feeding the fire slowly, and that fire burns much brighter, much more steadily, much bigger. So you want to fuel your body throughout the day, not just throw it all in at once and be done.
Are there food delivery places that are better for people with lupus?
Oh, that's a great question. So that really depends on what sort of specific dietary plan makes the most sense for you. That's one really good thing. In the last 5 years, I would say food delivery, meal kit delivery, so that you have to do the final prep yourself, has really exploded. And that gives people a lot of really great backup options. Granted, sometimes they are not the cheapest choice. So we do have to be mindful, of course, of people's budgets. But it really depends on for you individually, but there are lots out there.
Can you make suggestions on where to find new recipe ideas?
Oh my goodness, that's another thing. You could literally type in probably 10 random ingredients into Google and you'll get a million recipes back. I can't say that I have like websites that I exclusively favor. I am very much open-minded about where I get my recipes. So I would just say maybe give different recipes a try, see what you like. And also you can always base it upon things that you already know that you like in terms of like seasonings or flavors or taste profiles, and then find a blogger or recipe developer that has somehow included more veggies, less sodium, done some of the changes that you want implemented. and then has modified the recipe that way.
Any other questions? Those are some great questions, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for participating.
Thank you so much, Tanya. This is really helpful and questions that we've been getting for quite some time from people. So thank you. And thank you all for participating this evening. We hope you found tonight's webinar helpful. And again, if you have any questions or you're looking for other things to participate in, go to our website. It's lupus.org/Heartland, and you can see some of our other upcoming programs. So thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you all
Bye.
so much. Bye.